mid-1990s when Carl N. and his friends, remember Carl? When they took over the nuclear program for Ontario Hydro in the mid-90s, we all remember them quickly shutting down all units of Bruce A. We all remember our friends and neighbors and their families having to move to Pickering and Darlington to continue their careers. We all remember the impact on our children as they had to leave this area to find work. We all remember the devastation of the housing market and the effect on local schools, businesses, and services in our communities. We all remember our communities being in a death spiral. And then Bruce Power, led by Duncan, and his UK friends appeared on the scene. Could things get any worse? When Duncan took over in 2001, good things immediately began to happen. After an exhaustive assessment, a program was put in place to bring back Units 3 and 4 in Bruce A. After this success, as well as the strong performance of Bruce B, a business case was approved by the Ontario government to restart Bruce A Units 1 and 2. Although many experts said it couldn't be done, Duncan and his team, and many of you here, successfully brought the units back. Bruce site is now the world's largest operating nuclear facility, and for that you should all be proud. But Duncan didn't stop there. Duncan, with his team, and after 2+ years of very difficult negotiations with the IESO, secured a long-term agreement for all 8 units to run until 2064. Refurbishments of the units represents a total investment of $13 billion over the life of the site. And remember, all of this is private investment. The impact of this is staggering. It guarantees the operation of the site until 2064. It will result in up to 5,000 direct and indirect jobs being created or secured on the site annually. It equates to 18,000 jobs being secured or created across Ontario during the refurbishment period. And that's from 2020 to 2036, so it's a long period of time. It equates to $4 billion in annual economic benefit in Ontario. Not only has Duncan and Bruce Power brought back life to our communities, they didn't stop there. Just look at the number of local community charities, organizations, and events that Bruce Power supports. Every time you read a local paper, they are supporting some organization or event. I wouldn't attempt to try and list the groups they support, but I would be hard-pressed to find one that they haven't. In 2015, they donated $1.4 million to organizations and events in our communities. I don't think you could find another company anywhere so actively involved in supporting local communities. Now, Duncan will tell you all of these accomplishments are not a result of his efforts, but rather the dedication and drive of his staff. I think we all agree, without Duncan's vision, his leadership, his dedication, and his support, the Bruce site and our communities would not be where they are today. Duncan, on behalf of the Bruce Power pensioners, I thank you and wish you and Leslie the best in your future endeavors.
Thank you, Doug. Good morning, everyone. I had a speech prepared, but Doug gave most of it there, so I'll have to start again. The first thing I'll say, I'm going to start from the end and work back, because I think that's a good way to look at things. I was asking Doug how big the Pensioners Association is now, and I realised it's big enough that this proposal I'm going to make to you will make a lot of sense. I think that an association of your size should really have a clubhouse of some sort. And just over this way, I've got a lovely property that would work really well for you, so I'm accepting offers. So let me know about that, Nick. One of the things that, I'd said to Doug, what do you want me to talk about? And so he said, just personal stories. So let me tell you something. As I said, I'm going to start from the end and work back. Last week I was in London, UK, speaking at an event that was organised by EDF and WANO. And it was all about the operational life of nuclear plants. And really the interesting thing for me was, and Doug mentioned that we were talking about life extension and operating units longer. And obviously they wanted me to speak about the Bruce Power story, because it really is, when you look at it from the outside, there's a lot of people we're doing, they can't believe just, where we've come from and where we now are heading. The idea that these plants that were built could run to 2060 is amazing. And one of the things I'd said to people was, before I talk about what we're doing in the plant, let me tell you something which I think is important to acknowledge. Those of us that are working in the industry today are actually standing on the shoulders of giants. Because the reality is, the people that designed these plants, that we actually have the benefit of, think about what the technology available to them was in the early 60s when you were designing these plants. They're making a lot of these things based on slide rule calculations. They're not using, the kind of technology and computer design models that we have today. And it's amazing to me that they could have built plants of such a high quality that could be operating not just as long as they have, but with the potential to operate for so far into the future. 50 more years of operational life. So, people like me that come along now, when we're starting to think about restart and refurbishing plants, we've got all kinds of technology available to us. We can measure things to your finest specification using lasers and a whole pile of computer simulations that nobody even had a thought was possible when these plants were originally designed. But one of the messages that I was given is the same message you've heard me give. We might be in the nuclear industry, but we're really in a people business. We have been since the beginning. It was the bright people that designed these plants that gave us a chance to do what we're doing. And so, quite honestly, when I came to the Bruce site in the beginning, I remember someone asking me in a forum not unlike this, how do you guys think you can take over this plant when you've never operated CANDOs and you don't know anything about them? I can see Richard out there, so he was one of the people who remembers that story. He still doesn't know anything about him, by the way. So that's a different topic entirely. But anyway, the point I'd make is that my answer was, I don't need to know. You know. You're the experts. I'm never ever going to try and be the expert. You are. And so my job is a simple one. My job is to want you to actively share your expertise and help us move this business into a different future than the trajectory it was on when I got here. And that's been my mantra, since I first got here, and it will be till I step foot back in the UK. Because the reality is, it is a people industry. Sure, it's highly technical, but it is a people industry. And when Doug talked about the things we did in the beginning, yes, we wanted to know what condition the assets were in. But the biggest driver I had when I wanted to look at the potential for Bruce A was all about people. And the reason I say that is, if it was only ever going to be possible to run the 4 Bruce B units, then there was 1,000 too many people on our site when we first took over. And it wouldn't have been a good story for me to come and say, I'm really pleased to be here, but unfortunately a third of the people who are currently here are not going to be here with a new company. So it was very important for us to set what I call a compelling vision of the future. And lots of people talk to me about the Andadini times and the decisions to lay up the plant. And I've continued to say, I wasn't here when that decision was made. I have my own thoughts on whether it was right or wrong. But that really wasn't my job. My job was to say, what are we going to do in the future? And the best thing we could do to actually demonstrate the decision to close Bruce A was wrong, was to actually prove them wrong by restarting the units into improving the performance. Because the truth is, the numbers were not good. At the time the Bruce A units were shut down, the performance of Bruce B was not good, and it did warrant some serious surgery, that something needed to be done. Now, would that have been a layup of the units? It wouldn't have been my choice, because it's much harder to deal with return to service of units once they've been laid up. But in order to prove people wrong, it had to be the staff. I remember to this day having some very interesting conversations, and a couple of you have mentioned it to me even while I've been here, about the decision you were faced with. Did you want to come and join Bruce Power, or did you want to stay behind with Ontario Hydro? And there was a couple of groups that were difficult for us, because we, particularly if you look at the safety analysis group, who were all based in Toronto, and we were saying we need some of those people, but they can't be forced transferred, they have to want to come. And I met with those people and I gave them a promise of 2 things. Firstly, that we would never force relocate them to Bruce site. They wanted to live in Toronto, and it was, we would make sure we did that. And secondly, I promised them that we were going to pursue an active growth strategy. Now, just how active that growth strategy was, quite honestly, even I couldn't have predicted. But we were going to start right away and restart the A units. Now, the good news about that was, from a people point of view, we're setting a vision of growth and improvement. We're telling people who think they're being forced transferred off the site, forget that, you're staying here, you're staying in the community. And I've told many people this. The interesting thing for me is, when we came to the site, the average age of our employees was about 47, 48. And that wasn't a good demographic, because all the young people had been forced transferred off, and the older people had taken retirement. So you're left with a very compressed demographic. Now, that could have been a problem, except you guys can probably figure this out. If the average age of your employees is 47 or 48, what's the average age of their kids? That's your next employee population, because it was about 20, 25. So for me, it was very easy to say, firstly, there's a long-term future for the site. Secondly, some of your kids who left the area and didn't get the chance, now will get the chance to come back. And so when you look at our employee population today, we've got about 4,300. But of those people, something like 65% of them have only joined us since Bruce Power was created. So over the last number of years, we've actually transitioned this workforce very significantly. And yet the Bruce Power brand's still there. It's one of the things I'll tell you is that in some of my earlier speeches, I always said I value reputation above all things. And the reason I do that is because you don't give yourself a reputation, other people give you it. And that's why it's such an important prize. And so, as I've tried to do my job, I've tried to do it in a whole set of levels. The reputation of the company, What do we stand for, and how do we show that? And so things like supporting our local community, supporting our employees, supporting people that need help, sometimes in a public way, sometimes without any fanfare at all. That's what you do, that's the right thing to do. And quite honestly, that wasn't that hard, because this is a community that actually is used to volunteerism. You know, I live in a community, I know what it looks like. If people need help, people step up and help them. It's just what they do. So us being the largest employer in the area, it made all kinds of sense for us to follow the lead of our own staff and support community development and things like medical clinics or doctor recruitment, or even planting trees on 21, all things that matter to people, because that actually builds a feeling. That was before anyone wrote books about corporate social responsibility. It was all about doing the right thing, and that's what I've tried to do, set the tone. Chief executives, if they can do one thing, it's about setting the tone of an organisation. You do 2 or 3 things to do that. Firstly, tell me where I'm going. Help lead me there, don't drag me there. It's important to understand that. I'm going to tell you a bit of a story because I want to lighten the mood. You're all looking too serious. I was telling someone the other day about my first training programme. I was pretty young when I became a manager in the UK. In fact, I was the youngest manager ever appointed in the company. And people were kind of worried that we were taking a chance on someone too young. So I get sent to a psychologist in London. Nothing to do with any deficiency, but they just wanted to check everything. And they ended up sending me a course at a place called Cranfield University. Cranfield's very highly regarded, and the course was called General Management for Specialists. And the reason they thought I could use that was, I'm an engineer, I'm a control engineer, and as I progressed in my career, I was always able to have technical knowledge over the people I was working with. I was a craftsman and worked my way up, but I was always in my own area of expertise, if you call it that. And here I was being given a chance to be an engineering manager, which would have looked over mechanical and other disciplines, although it's pretty simple stuff in mechanics. You know what they say, the smaller the brain, the bigger the toolbox. So that never particularly endeared me to a mechanical guy, so that's the kind of thing you say only days before retirement. But anyway, they sent me to this Cranfield school, and they did a lot of kind of team building things. And the first exercise they did was you went out into a car park and you stood in a circle. There was maybe, 40 people on this course, and they put 2 walkie-talkies in the centre of the floor. And so you're all standing there, and suddenly the walkie-talkies start speaking. So one of the members of the group goes and picks it up. The guy who picked it up was a Nigerian who didn't speak very good English at all, but he had the walkie-talkie, so he didn't understand what was being said, and so you're trying to figure out how to tactically say, give us that bloody thing. But anyway, long story short, the mission, this first mission, was to go up into the hills in the Lake District and rescue a climber who'd become lost, and one of them had suspected broken leg. So the job of this team, go up, find that person, stretcher, bring him back to base. That was the mission. Now, the interesting thing about that was, it was a mixed group, and people from all sectors. So you start by saying, okay, we need to get equipment. So there's an equipment room, someone picked up the stretcher, which is in a backpack, okay? We need somebody with map reading skills. Does anyone get map reading skills? I said, oh, I do. I was a Boy Scout. I'm prepared to admit that, by the way, I was a Boy Scout. But anyway, Boy Scouts can read maps. So my job was to direct them to the location. Not a problem. So we do that, we get to the location. There's someone who's simulated broken leg. Okay, unpack the stretcher. So the guy takes the backpack off. And at that point you realise the stretcher comes in 2 parts and you've only got 1 part. It was a good idea to check that before you left. But anyway, we managed to bumble our way down and get the person rescued. So we come into a debriefing session. and talk about what did we learn. And so of course, people say the obvious things like we used to check the stretcher before we left. One of the guys who was a director in a steel firm was chastised because he immediately said, there's a pregnant woman in the group, and he said, well, you can't come. That was his kind of first contribution. You're no use to this. Instead of trying to give her a constructive role or something. But anyway, so he got some bad marks there. But the interesting thing for me was, people say, well, what did you get out of the exercise? And a person stood up and said, well, I was really upset about the whole thing. Oh, how so? Well, I wanted to learn how to read maps. And that wee Scottish guy, he wouldn't let anybody else see the map. So, the lesson for me in that there was, I thought however we managed it, we successfully achieved our goal, yet some people in the group were not happy about the outcome. Next day, next exercise. So the next exercise involved going, what's called traversing a ravine. 2 teams, one go up the left side, one go up the right side. You've got to get material from one side to the other. In order to do that, you have to actually be able to get a rope from one side of the ravine over to the other. I don't know if anyone goes into that, but so the question is, before we leave, does anyone know how to tie knots? Your Boy Scouts can read maps and they can tie knots. So, I'm no fool, so I say, I can tie knots, who would like to learn? Good job. So we then get up to this area, and in order to get the rope across, you have this thing, it's called a monkey fist. And what it is it's kind of like a monkey fist. It's a weighted thing, you tie a very thin line to it, you throw it across, and the rope gets pulled across with that group. Now this group were smart, because it was designed in such a way, there was no way in hell anybody was going to be able to throw this thing across. So you spend an hour trying to throw it, and everybody's okay, out the way, I'll get it, I used to play hockey or whatever. Nobody ever got the thing over, so they call a halt to it. You all go back and say, okay, what happened there? Well, we failed. But actually, a lot of people felt a lot better about it, because I learned to tie knots and I enjoyed the fresh air, whatever it would be. So, what's the lesson in that? Well, first exercise, you've achieved your objective, but some people aren't happy. Second exercise, you failed, but you failed together as a team, and people are not feeling as bad about failure. Third exercise was something which was called surveying a tarn. Tarn's a small lake in the Lake District, so the idea is you go, you measure it out, you do a kind of survey of it. But they're smart people that say, actually you've got 3 options, there's 3 you can go to. One is the closest, you can do it there, not really much scenery. The second one's a bit higher up, but you'll have to carry the canoes to get up there, it's a bit of heavy work. The third one's a bit further away, but there's eagles nesting there and the scenery's beautiful. So you sit and talk about, well, what do I want to do? Well, I don't want to go too far. And these canoes look kind of heavy, and so you spend the first 2 hours trying to decide what you're going to do. Who knows how to use a leveling table? Well, I have to admit, I did know how to use a leveling table, but I've already learned it, and I'll show people, and we'll all learn how to use it. But long story short, we used all the time trying to decide who was going to be in charge and where we were going to go. And the reason I'm telling you those stories is, that is actually what leadership's about. Not everybody who's in your team is actually motivated to succeed for the stand. There's lots of different ways to motivate people, and there's lots of different ways to lead. Sometimes you can lead from the front. I've got the map, follow me. Sometimes you can lead from the side, let me help you, read the map. Sometimes you read one from behind where you're actually providing support. And one of the things I've learned in my career is one size doesn't fit all. So when I came to the Bruce site, armed with that, plus a lot of experience I had in other parts of the world before I got here, you take the time to understand the community you're working with. And by that I mean the community of employees. But when I first came here, we were in a confidential process here, and I flew into the Kincardine airport without anybody knowing who I was, drove around the area, saw the signs on the lawn saying retube the Bruce and closing Bruce is no solution, and I remember seeing them. And I realised, this was a community that was hurting. I stayed in Best Western, but my first experience in Kincardine, which was really quite funny, was one night there wasn't a room there, and I came to stay in Sutton Place. Got there about 8 o'clock. This shows you how naive I am. So I got there about 8 o'clock and I said, "Is the restaurant still open?" No, there's nothing to have at this time. "Is the bar still open?" "No, but I've got a bottle of vodka in my room you can have." Okay, I'm starting to understand the Kincardine. But that's a true story, by the way. But anyway, most of my stories are somewhat true. But the reality is, once you understand what's happening in a community, you start to understand what I called was a victim mentality. Plants were closed up, people were surprised by it, it wasn't really explained well to people, and it ripped the heart out of the community because people were caught. People who are building houses or investing in houses and all of those things were shocked by what happened. And so, although I saw that, it gave me something to build on. We are going to be the opposite of that. We're going to be different. And we're going to do it together. I see Dave and others there from the PW. One of the first documents I signed when I came here was a memorandum of understanding with the unions. Because what I wanted to be able to say to people is, whatever it is you value is still there. Seniority, collective agreement, all your pension benefits. That's a given. We are not looking to take anything away from people. But the other part of that same document was how we're going to work together. It's not everyone's got the same job as it relates to the things they value, and everyone's got a new job as it relates to what we're going to do next. And that partnership has stood the test of time. Some tough things in there, some tough things we've done, but whatever we've done together. And that leads me to what I feel proudest about my time here. There's no question that we took on challenges, and Doug said it. The things we've done, people said couldn't be done. Ron Osborne, who was the CEO of Ontario Hydro when he did this deal, good friend of mine, and Ron told me that when we first made an offer for this site, he took his entire management team to what's that place called? It's near Orange Road. Hockley Valley. He took them all there and he said, "Before I sign this deal, tell me these guys won't be able to restart Brucey, because if they do, we're going to look really silly." And every one of his leadership team said, no way in hell can these guys restart Brucey. It can't be done. And he and I used to laugh about it afterwards, because a month after we took control of the site, we said we're going to restart Train 4. And his people said they'll fail. Well, it didn't fail. And then when we got 3 and 4 going, we said, I always said to people, it's really heartbreaking to walk through Bruce A and only half of it's going. So we're going to find out how to do the other 2 as well. And that's what I mean about the compelling vision. Did I know how to do it? No, but I knew we were going to find a way to do it, because nothing succeeds like success. Once we had got to the point where we could do things people said we couldn't do, then that's what we're going to keep doing. And so restarting 1 and 2 was, for me, probably a lot of people thought that that's when I would leave. A lot of people said, got back to 8 units, he's done what he came to do, and that's the time to leave. And the reason I didn't go was because unless I negotiated a deal that would see the rest of the units be extended, then what I was looking at was a situation where, sure, I had 8 units on, but starting in 2018, we'd start closing them again, which would have been heartbreaking for me and for the community. So, quite honestly, I spent the last 2 years, when I could have otherwise retired, to finish a job, and finishing the job was getting the deal. And I could speak for hours on that negotiation. But the problem with these things, we talk in telephone numbers. This power contract that we just entered into, is $250 billion power contract. $257 billion of energy will come from a Bruce site. It's not hard to get to that number. It's 8 reactors till 2063 at kind of $60 a megawatt hour. So if you add that up, you get $250 billion. Now nobody's actually done that in the media because it would have scared everybody to death. But that's what it means, and it means that, you know, what I'd said to our staff right from the beginning is our future is in our own hands. We will stand or fall by what we do inside the site. Get the units on, run them well. I'll get investors. We'll get a deal. We'll actually secure a long-term future, and that's what we've done. And you know, I cannot say enough about the quality of the staff and how they've responded to it. And you know, I can see people in this room who retired and came back and helped. And I assume it's not because they're short of money, although some of them I know spend heavily. But the truth is, yeah, that expertise and that knowledge applied at a time when we were trying to do a lot of work has been incredibly important. It's helped mentor young people, it's helped to cope with the very heavy workload we've had. But I can stand here and give you many examples of when our staff have stepped up when we needed them. You know, this job, CEO can be tough at times, and I've always said whenever I was having a tough day, all I had to do was put on my hard hat and get around the plant, and I always came back feeling better because you could see people are doing their best and we're committed to success, and so it makes the job easy. So quite honestly, when I come to this stage where I'm stepping away, this is the right time for me to leave Bruce Power. Why? Because we've got all the units on. We've just executed a transaction that will see the future be secure. We'll get INPO 1 ratings on the plant. It's not been made public yet, but the regulators have now raised both Bruce A and Bruce B to their highest rating. So I can say, yeah, I can say that, well, I can certainly say it was okay when I left. But what I can also say is, what I've said before, the future is still in our hands, and it's in the hands of people. You know, I told our staff that when it was coming to the point of making this big investment, our investors already knew I was leaving because I told them a couple of years ago. And I promised I would stay till we got the deal done. Now, the deal took longer, but, you know, I was still committed to see it through. So the message in that is, sure, they had relied on Duncan for a long time, but they weren't betting on Duncan to take them to the next phase. They were betting on you guys. They were betting on the people who show up every day. They were betting on the commitment, and they were doing that based on the performance we had. If we didn't have the performance, I would never have been able to do the deal, and I wasn't delivering the performance the staff were. So, you know, in closing, let me say a couple of things. Firstly, this has been the highlight of my career, no question, no doubt about it. You know, I came here with ambition, found a formula that worked, and, you know, engaged a group of employees who wanted to prove just what we could do. And we've proven that to ourselves and to everybody else. And I can tell you, our brand recognition spans the globe. You know, I can go anywhere in the world and people know who we are and what we've done. And so with very mixed feelings, I step away now, but I know that it's important for the company to be something other than Duncan, and it's important that we let the new leader be in his seat long enough to plan the next campaign. It would make no sense for me to stay and plan a campaign that I'm not going to execute. It wouldn't be fair to the next guy, and it wouldn't be fair to the staff. So there is a time for all things. You know, maybe I was cometh the hour, cometh the man. It was the right time when I came, and this is the right time for me to leave. In closing, let me tell you that I'm retiring for a day, as it turns out, because the Monday I start my job as a bank holiday in the UK. So I'm getting the Monday off. But let me just explain why I'm doing what I'm doing in the UK too, because it matters. As well as trying to get the Bruce site on, I've been a very active advocate for the nuclear industry worldwide. You know, I've been the president of LANO, I've done a lot internationally. the industry needs new build. It's not going to be in Canada, and it's not going to be anytime soon. We have to get new build off and running, and the UK is an environment where it should work. And honestly, the reason I'm in North America at all was because I tried to sell that deal to them in 1993, and they weren't ready to hear it. I left the UK in 1996. The original plan was, we'll stop talking about new build for 3 years, Duncan, we go to North America. 3 years later, I'll come back and we'll sort it out. It's going to be 20 years, and it's still not sorted. And so I care about that outcome, so I'm going to give it my best shot to try and progress new build in the UK, because quite honestly, in the same way that what we've done at Bruce matters in a nuclear world, what I do in the UK next will matter here, because it'll affect future commitments for nuclear. Maybe not for Bruce Power in the short term because we've got a plan, but it will affect the industry. It's never good for an industry to not be refreshing and rebuilding, so I want to give it a shot. I also would prefer that we don't leave the nuclear build landscape to the Russians and the Chinese. It's not good for the industry. So I'm going back there, I'm going to give it my best shot, I'm going to take with me everything I've learned, and I'm going to continue to be involved and active in this community. I've agreed with the Bruce Power board that I'll stay as an advisor for 3 years to Bruce Power, so I'm not disappearing entirely. Part of that job, part of the job is to help them find a replacement. Part is to support that replacement, after which time support the board. I mean, the truth is the deal we just negotiated is incredibly complicated, and it leaves with it a lot of opportunity to disagree. So the idea is that since I was the architect of it, when things get tough, I can come in and say, that's not what I meant to say. I misunderstood, it must be the accent. So anyway, I want to thank you all. I understand that this, I tell people that being in the nuclear industry is like Hotel California. You can check out any time, but you can never leave. So that's why you guys are still here as a group, because you're united in your careers, you're united in your concern about the industry short and long term, and it's always a pleasure to speak to you. So thank you all very much.
Thank you very much, Duncan. Your new Japanese company, Horizon Electric, that they will be able to understand your Canadian accent, eh? Just one other thing. Someone wanted to make a presentation to Duncan, sort of an ad hoc thing, Jerry McGuire. So if I could give him the stage for a few minutes, and hopefully he's not going to embarrass Duncan with anything. I have no idea what he's doing, so. But I'm sure he won't do that.
Thanks a lot. First of all, Duncan, I think we can scrape together a buck and we'll rent that place from you. Does it come with meals? We like meals. Anyway, I got a couple little gifts for you because we weren't sure whether you were retiring or you got fired or what's going on. So, does anybody knows in Port Elgin, they see me at the corner by the Queens there selling pens so I can get a beer. So I've got one for you, Duncan, in case you need to get a pint over there. It's just one of my cheap ones. But this one gift, it's not a bag so you can rake your leaves before we take over, but back in 2001, when Power Workers Union and when you signed a deal, we had a golf tournament, a union golf tournament, and you were still trying to be nice to the union, and so you showed up. Anyway, we were quite, or I was anyway, quite looking forward to seeing how a real Scottish golfer played golf. And I happened to be following your group around. You were with McKinnon, and you came up to a water hole there at Saugeen, and we were playing best ball. The rest of the team had all gone on the drink. So little Duncan gets up there with his big clubs. He's going to show everybody. Well, lo and behold, he ends up in the drink. And then the real Scottish guy came out and he had a little temper tantrum, swung the club, bent it in half, and threw it in the water. Well, I was flabbergasted that you would do something like that, because I'd never seen anybody play golf like that before. I managed to retrieve the club. And at the time we were on E crew at Bruce B, so I brought it into the work that weekend in hopes that we could straighten it out and give it back to you. We had those guys with the big toolboxes work on it all weekend. And we had a lot of other experts going down to the shop. The whole crew was there. We canceled all work for the weekend to get this club back together. At one point we were going to put a stainless steel shaft on it, but apparently there was none left in stores. They had a big run on belt buckles. Anyway, they decided that it couldn't be straightened out, but they repurposed it. So now we've got the club back for you. And as a retirement gift or firing gift or whatever it is, I'd like to present this to you. So when you go back to those Scottish golf courses, you can show them how we really play golf.